To Rocket Man, his term, Kim Jong-un, in terms of him having ICBM capability, nuclear capability, firing missiles over Japan, our ally, threatening Guam, and potentially maybe being able to reach the United States, continental United States, with a nuclear weapon. At some point, this is going to come to a head. What was the calm before the storm?
We can't let this to go on. We just can't. Now, you can say what you want. This should have been handled 25 years ago. It should have been handled 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago. It should have been handled by numerous, not just Obama, but certainly President Obama should have taken care of it. Now it's at a point where it's very, very far advanced. Something has to be done. We can't allow this to happen. Now, China's been very helpful, I think, who knows? They seem to be very helpful. They cut off banking to North Korea. That's something they've never done before. They've cut down, way down on the fuel, and a lot of other things. We're going to see what happens. But we cannot allow this to happen. This should have been taken care of long ago. Clinton gave them billions of dollars, gave them lots of other things, and before the contract, the ink was dry on the contract, they were already starting again with the missiles and with the nuclear, frankly. So we are in a position, look, we're very strong. I'm building up the military like nobody's ever seen. We're close to $800 billion in spending. Sean, I don't know if you know, but the military, our military was totally, really depleted. You look around and you see what's going on. You take a look at what we're buying right now with the jet fighters and all of the equipment we're buying. And, it's two things, really. It is jobs, and that's far less important. But we build the greatest military equipment in the world. We have missiles that can knock out a missile in the air 97% of the time. And if you send two of them, it's going to get knocked out.
Is it fair to say if he keeps firing missiles, that's going to end?
Well, I don't want to say anything. You don't want to I'm just telling you, I don't want to talk about it because, all these people, they talk. I remember with Mosul, and I use this all the time with Mosul. We are going to be attacking Mosul in 4 months. We're attacking Mosul in 3 months. I say, why do they keep saying it? Attack, do it, or don't do it, or whatever. But they kept talking about it. And by the way, it turned out to be hell on wheels. It was hard because they were so totally prepared. And I'm not saying I'm doing anything, and I'm not saying I'm not. But we shouldn't be talking about it.
Calm before the storm, you're not going to talk about that either?
No, I don't talk about it. No.
Iran, it was interesting. Bill Clinton, when he made the deal with Kim Jong-un's father, Kim Jong-il, he actually said, this is a good deal for the American people. It was not. It seems the same mistake was made with President Obama and the Iranian deal. There's reports you will decertify this. You can also pull out of it. John Bolton suggesting you just pull out completely. Why decertify and not just scrap it?
Well, you can do both, to be honest with you. You can do both. You can decertify and then... I know exactly what I'm going to do, but I can't give it away tonight. But I'm going to be announcing it very shortly. But
why not, right?
But I will. I mean, there's no secret. I think it was one of the most incompetently drawn deals I've ever seen. $150 billion given. We got nothing. They got a path to nuclear weapons very quickly. And think of this one, $1.7 billion in cash. This is cash out of your pocket. What? You know how many airplane loads that must be? Did you ever see $1 million like a promotion where they have $1 million in $100 bills? It's a lot of. This is $1.7 billion. You'd almost say, who would be authorized to do it? And who are the people that deliver it? You may never see them again, right? But,
plane loads.
But just plane loads. So this is the worst deal. We got nothing. So I'm not giving anything away, but I've been saying this for a long time. You have people dancing and screaming in the streets of Iran. Now, I have to tell you, those people are possibly staged because I happen to believe the people of Iran are great people and they want freedom and they want to be sort of friendly with us. I really believe that. But they're dancing in the streets and they're singing Death to America, and Kerry's out there negotiating a deal and giving up every single point. He'd go in, we'd like this, you're not having it, done. It's the worst deal I've ever seen. Whether it's countrywide or any other wide, there is no worse deal. So we will see what happens pretty soon. A lot of people are guessing, but maybe there's not so much guessing. but it was an incompetently
You want
drawn
out of this deal.
Look, it's a very bad deal. I'm not saying anything different tonight that I have been saying for 2 years.
Yeah.
It's a horrible, horrible embarrassment to our country. And we did it out of weakness when actually we had great strength.
Let me ask you about immigration. You came up with a 70-point plan. There was fear after you had met with Pelosi and Schumer and you were talking about DACA. One of the things I've always noticed is we always get the tax increase, we never get the spending cuts. You always get the consideration on immigration, you never get the wall built. Part of it is there will be, you said, no deal on DACA unless, of course, we're going to end chain migration. You're going to build a wall that's going to be see-through now, so the...
Well, it may be. We're looking. Yeah. We right now have built 5 prototypes. They just are going up, and some of them are already finished. And I will say they're really looking good. They're really looking good. And our country needs it. We need it not only for people, but we need it for the drugs that are pouring into our country. I mean, we have drugs that are pouring into our country, so we don't have a choice. And... You know, you can say what you want. I was with Bibi Netanyahu of Israel, and he was saying, Donald, the wall works. Believe me. They had an open border that was like a sieve. People just poured in. He said 99.9% of the...
Go ahead.
Right? You don't get a lot of good news in the media.
Well, you don't get so much.
The market's up 25% since you won. You tweeted this out that nobody in the media brings it up, so I said, you know what, I'm going to bring it up tonight. $5.2 trillion in wealth created. We have the lowest unemployment rate in 16 years. We have the best labor participation rate in 7 years and the lowest number of people on food stamps in 7 years.
That's right.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's going really well. I'm loving it. I'm doing a job for the people, and people are seeing that. And I'm so proud of the $5.2 trillion of increase in the stock market. Now, if you look at the stock market, that's one element, but then we have many other elements. The country, we took it over, it owed $20 trillion. As you know, the last 8 years, they borrowed more than it did in the whole history of our country. So they borrowed more than $10 trillion, right? And yet we picked up $5.2 trillion just in the stock market, possibly picked up the whole thing in terms of the first 9 months, in terms of value. So you could say, in one sense, we're really increasing values, and maybe in a sense we're reducing debt. But we're very honored by it, and we're very, very happy with what's happening on Wall Street.
You came back to Pennsylvania. I know you've been in Wisconsin and Michigan and Ohio and North Carolina because a lot of people still need opportunity and jobs. Right. You're really here. You're going to be talking at length about your economic plan.
That's right.
Let's talk about it.
Okay. Well, first of all, it's a massive tax cut. And, you know, it's a reform, but it's a massive tax cut. Somehow that's... And, you know, when we first introduced it, and for years they talk about tax reform, I said the problem with the word reform, nobody understands what it means. Because reform could mean you're going to raise taxes. This is the largest tax cut in the history of our country. It is incredible. It's going to put people to work. So right now, Sean, we are the highest taxed nation in the world, and we're going to be now down in the lower rung in terms of taxes. A family can get, and a business can get, especially a subchapter S. You know, you're doing different kinds of things with your businesses. Some people run it individually. But you can get as much as a 40% tax reduction. Again, it's the largest tax reduction in the history of our country.
Let's go through it. So, and this is important. I mean, there's no two accountants that can give you the same liability to the government if you give them the same information. That's how complicated the tax code is. You want to drop 7 brackets to 3.
We're going to drop, actually, if you look at it, because we have a 0 bracket, because a lot of people pay 0. So we really have 4, and they had 8. So it's really 8 down to 4. We're cutting it in half. And a lot are taxed below the $12,000 mark and $24,000 mark for a family. They're taxed at 0. After that, it goes to 12% from 15%. And, you know, the Democrats told a very terrible fib. They said that they read the brackets so that the brackets were inverted. And if you read it that way, but that's not the way it goes. And we've been praised for the amount of money, the middle class. This is really what I'm looking for the middle class. I call it the working people. And the working people are going to get a massive tax break. And corporations and companies and small companies are going to get large-scale tax relief. and they'll be able to compete with anybody in the world, which is what we need.
You said the corporate rate, which is so important, you said 20% is your max.
So right now we're at 35%, and many corporations are paying 40s and 42, and because they have state taxes and city taxes, and they have taxes so many different directions. You know what they do? They leave the country, and they fire everybody, and they're gone, and they never come back. Now we have companies moving back into the country. We have, you saw last week, auto companies are announcing that they're going to build plants back in the United States. That hasn't happened for years. And they're moving back, and not just because of the tax. This tax is so important, but they're seeing enthusiasm. We have the highest enthusiasm level in 28 years
Consumer
for
confidence.
manufacturing, for all of the different things that we talk about. But for business, basically, it's enthusiasm. Everybody's enthused about our country. So we're very honored by it, and I am really honored by the folks in this room. And by the way, the truckers, we love the truckers, I can tell you. Sure. Happens to be true.
The top 10% pay 70% of the tax bill. The bottom 50% pay 2% of the total income tax rate. Why is there are multinational corporations that have parked trillions of dollars in countries that offer them better tax relief? You're trying to incentivize those trillions to come back here with a low repatriation rate. How low will that be, and how much do you think you can bring back into the United States, and what does it mean?
Okay, so right now you have probably, and nobody knows the exact number because I actually think it's much higher than people understand, but it'll probably be over $3 trillion is outside of our country and our companies, and they just can't get it back. They're trying, but they can't get it back. Number one, it's a bureaucratic mess. Number two, the tax rate is so high it doesn't make sense. So what they do is they invest it in Europe and other places where the money is. And I'll tell you what they do also. They leave the country because the money becomes so much and so valuable to them that they leave the country, our country, to go and get their money. So they leave the country and they fire everybody. Now what we're doing is we're lowering the rate so they can bring it back in. We're giving them a shot to bring all that money. I think it's all going to come back in. It's going to come back in immediately. It's going to be more than $3 trillion. Probably we're looking at a 10% rate. It may be around that number, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, but it's going to be right around that number, probably 10%. And right now what it is 35% plus. Now, who's going to bring money back when you have to pay, by the time you finish, almost half of your money in tax? So
you're never going to bring it back.
So we're going to have that money come back in. It's going to put people to work so fast, and the money itself is going to go to work very fast. And, you know, say what you want about Democrats and Republicans. For years, years and years, everybody's wanted to do that. You have trillions of dollars outside of our country, offshore, and the Democrats wanted it back, the Republicans wanted it back, everybody wanted it back, and they couldn't do it. They couldn't get a deal. We're going to do a deal, and we're putting it down as part of our tax cuts.
One of the things some people have brought up, like every time I tune into anybody else in the media except Fox, there are tax cuts for the wealthy. Yeah. Now, the rate for some people goes down, but if you live in a state like New York or Illinois or New Jersey or California, you won't be able to deduct your local or state income tax. In other words, if you elect politicians that want to raise taxes, you're going to pay the penalty. So that's not really true that this is a tax cut for the wealthy as they're portraying it. What is your answer to that?
Well, you know, you have some really well-run states that have very little borrowing. Some have no borrowing, but they have very little borrowing. And it's unfair that a state that is well-run is really subsidizing states that have been horribly mismanaged. I won't use names, but we understand the names. But there are some states that have hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in borrowing. And it's unfair that those states really are being subsidized by states like Indiana and Iowa, and I mean, I could name many states. I could probably name 3/4 of them. They're so well run, and they're being penalized. They're being penalized, and it's not fair. And so what we're doing is we're showing that. Now, with all of that, the tax cuts are so steep that the people in every state benefit. But it's finally time to say, hey, make sure that your politicians do a good job of running your state. Otherwise, you're not going to benefit. You know, you look at a place like Florida, it's really well run by Rick Scott. And, you know, by Governor Scott, he's done a great job. And so many people have done a great job. And those are the people that, frankly, should
the people that had the intelligence to elect them should really benefit, and that's what we're doing. We're creating an incentive. And the bottom line, though, look, the tax cut is massive. We're bringing it down to 20%. We're bringing it down to 12% for individuals. We're bringing it down to 0 in some cases. If it's a family, it's below $24,000. Anything below $24,000 is 0. And look, it's, as I just said, it's the biggest tax cut in the history of our country, and it's going to spur growth, and it's going to keep our companies here. Our companies are leaving because the taxes are so high.
But you also, a big part of it you've already done, and that is you've ended a lot of the Obama-era regulations, especially in industries like energy and coal.
Right.
There seems to be, you have a very strong commitment. You just recently went forward with ANWR. You've put in place opportunities for the coal mining industry, right. Fracking. We do have an opportunity to be energy independent, and there seems to be millions of high-paying career jobs for people available if that decision is made. How big a part is that for the economic recovery?
Well, I have done so much, and Scott Pruitt, who is in EPA, has done incredibly. You saw yesterday at a news conference on coal, and his whole concept was coal is back. It's back. And the miners are working again.
They're fracking in Pennsylvania?
This isn't a bad area either. Well, as an example, mines are opening in the state of Pennsylvania. And I love this state because I happen to go to college in the state. I know it very well, and I love it.
You also won Pennsylvania, right? Is he going to win Pennsylvania in 2022?
No, by the way, incredible people, incredible state. And I did win Pennsylvania. I worked hard in Pennsylvania. And frankly, I understand what Pennsylvania is about work. These are people that want to work. But we're opening mines. We're opening mines in the state of Pennsylvania. We're opening mines in other places. You know, coal is and I call it clean coal. They have technology today that's so incredible. What they can do with a piece of coal is so incredible. I call it clean coal, but it's one of our great resources. One thing that I'm very proud of, the state of West Virginia, last month, it was one of the highest increases, percentage increases in GDP. The state of Texas beat it. And people say, wait a minute, West Virginia just came in second. You know what that's about? That's about cutting regulations and letting the people go and mine. And I was so proud of that because West Virginia's had very tough times. And, you know, they were overwhelmingly, for me, yeah. Hillary said she wants to close up industries, and she wants to close up the coal industry, and I'm the opposite. So I'm very proud of that, and Pennsylvania likewise, very proud.
The biggest obstacle before you arrived here, I had an opportunity to interview a lot of people in this great crowd, and I asked them basically 3 different questions. What they thought of you. Overwhelmingly, there's a lot of support for you here. Congress. When I asked them about what was your answer on Congress? What was your answer on the media? We saw what happened with health care and John McCain. This economic plan sounds a lot to me like what Reagan did, and that created 20 million new jobs and revenues doubled. This is important for your agenda.
Yeah.
How do you get this through the Senate, which has not had a good record in the last 10 months?
Well, first of all, this will be an even bigger tax cut than the great Reagan cuts. This will be even more dramatic, and I think it will create even more incentive. But let's talk. Media is bad. They're really dishonest people. These are very, very dishonest people in many cases, and not all. Look, I know some reporters, I know some journalists that are phenomenal people and very straight, very honest. But there's